You ever look at those videos online and go, how do they get it so cinematic looking? How does it look so good? They must have really great cameras that shoot really good video. And how can I get my footage to look like that? You see, I'm primarily a sports photographer. Mostly anything with wheels. Bikes and boards are kind of my thing. Cycling, skateboarding, that kind of thing. Getting into the automotive photography a little bit lately. Primarily got into it through photography. But with the advent of great hybrid cameras over the last 10 years or so, I've seen a lot of really good videos coming out by a lot of good photographers that are incorporating video into their work as well. So I want to do the same thing with mine. Problem is, a lot of modern day cameras these days are mirrorless and they're hybrid cameras, so they shoot really good raw video as well as raw photos. Unfortunately, all of my camera gear, my primary stills camera is a Pentax K3 Mark III, which is a fantastic stills camera. It does shoot 4K video, but it does not shoot in any sort of raw video format or log format, which a lot of the modern day mirrorless cameras do. So they kind of have a leg up on what I am able to produce. My other camera that I usually bring with me to when I'm covering events is a GoPro Hero 8. And again, it does not shoot raw video. None of the GoPros do. So I'm kind of limited to whatever it spits out as far as video quality goes. I have incorporated a DJI Neo 2 drone into the mix, so I'll be using that more this year when I go out to cover events. But again, it does not shoot raw video as well. So when it comes to post-processing, I'm a little bit limited. And I'm so used to shooting raw photos, and I love the editing process. I really do. I love getting in there and tweaking and doing all of the post-production work to the photos that I capture. So I want to be able to do the same thing with my videos, but unfortunately none of my camera equipment shoots raw. Does that stop me? No. Should it stop you? No, absolutely not. You can still do a lot of good post-production color grading with your non-log or non-raw video footage. Just takes a little bit more work. So in this video, I'm going to show you my process when it comes to post-processing non-raw and non-log video footage. So if you have a DSLR, if you've got a bridge camera, if you've got a phone, if you've got a GoPro, you've got any of that stuff, I hope this video will sort of help you when it comes to making your straight out of camera video footage a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more cinematic, a little more pop. So let's get into it. Okay, so for this purpose in this tutorial, I'm going to duplicate this clip and just kind of put it on top here so we can have an original, and then we can have the color graded version on top of it, so we can kind of do a little bit of a side-by-side fade in, fade out kind of clip on top of this one so we can kind of see the difference. So this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to color grade the duplicated clip. Okay, so I've dropped in one of my videos here, and this was taken down on a nice sunny day down by the water. I was testing out a vintage lens on my camera, just wanted to kind of see what the video quality was like. And this is a perfect example of a clip that sort of demands to be punched up a little bit. The colors are pretty good, you know, everything looks pretty good, but you can always make it a little bit better. So what I do is, on a real simple level, if you just go to the color tab here, I have these LUTs here. It's called Cinematic LUTs, 30 free Cinematic LUTs. I downloaded it. I'll put the link in the description below. But they're really good. They're not super over LUTty, if you want to call it that. So I find that they're really good for non-log and non-raw video. So what you'll have to do is obviously you got to tweak them, and I'll show you what I do with these clips here. But I find them really good, and I kind of go back to them every now and then, or for the most part, I go back to them all the time. And there's a few that I've kind of selected as my favorites, right? But I'll kind of go through them. And generally, what I'll do is I'll go up here, and I'll put it in split screen mode, versions and original. All right, so the one on the left is the original, the one on the right is the version that we're going to change. And honestly, what I usually do is I'll just kind of double click each one to kind of see what it represents, right? And in terms of what I want to go for now, what I want to do is I kind of want to warm it up a little bit, this particular clip. So I kind of like the Bucana one here. It is a Rec 709. And as you can see right off the bat, it definitely warms it up, sort of tones down the green and the leaves. So I kind of like that one, so we'll go with that one. But then what I do is I find, oh, it's a little bit over processed, right? You can leave it as is if you want. It looks good, but to me it's a little bit over processed. So the first thing I do is I usually go to the key tab down here in the color page, and the key output I usually drop down. On these ones I usually go anywhere between 80 to 90%. And if you drop it all the way down, you'll see that it's pretty much the same as the original clip. If you crank it all the way up, right, then you'll see that it kind of gets back up to when you first applied the LUT. So if you kind of just click and drag, I'll set this one to maybe like 83.5%. So that's pretty good. It's toned down a little bit, and then from there I'll usually just still increase the detail a little bit, anywhere from 10 to 15 kind of thing, and then I just kind of bump up the contrast a wee bit, not too much, just to kind of bring out some of the details a bit. Saturation I generally leave, unless I want to desaturate something a little bit. But if you kind of crank this one up a little bit too much, sometimes it can get a little wonky. So I usually kind of leave that one around the 50 to 52 kind of range. Shadows, I kind of want to bring a little bit out on the leaves here, so I'll just kind of drag that up a wee bit. Yeah, bring that up maybe like 5. Color boost I don't really touch. And the only other thing that I really do is I'll adjust the temperature a little bit. So say I want to warm this up a little bit more, I'll kind of bring that up maybe like 150, 160-ish. So yeah, and then we can kind of see a side by side. So definitely warmed up a little bit. I mean, out of the camera this is pretty good, but this just kind of gives it a little bit more of a dramatic pop to it. So if we go back to here, what I'm going to do just for demonstration purposes is just kind of scroll through a little bit just so we can kind of keep the original one here. And then I'm just going to go to effects here, and I'm just going to do a little edge wipe on there. And stretch that out a little bit. Change that to 90 degrees so we can kind of see what the difference is. So if we play the original, that's the original, and then that's wiping through to the color graded version, which I think is a good way to kind of sort of show you guys the difference. So that's the original, that is the color graded version. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Adds a little bit of drama to it, kind of changes up the clip a little bit. Like I said, out of the camera is pretty good, but if you just kind of want to add a little bit of cinematic nature to your clips, I mean, what you could even do is you could go up to timeline here, go down to output blanking, and basically add some letterbox just to kind of add a little bit more drama to it. All right, yeah, so that looks pretty good. I like that. Yeah, just kind of gives it a little bit more of an old-timey kind of look. And especially this is good because this was taken with a vintage lens. So to kind of punch that up a little bit, add that color grade to it just to kind of give it that old-timey look. I'm just going to remove that. Just click on reset on that. All right, let's move on to the next one. So here we have a clip of a little woodpecker doing his thing. And as you can see, it's a little bit blown out, but the woodpecker is in good detail. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate this clip here. And just hit Control C. And I'm going to hit Control V. Okay, so I've duplicated the clip. I've got it on top here. I'm going to color grade the duplicated one. This is just for demo purposes. And as you can see, side by side. And let's scroll through these here. That's a little bit much. Bukana's a little bit a little bit too washed out. So what do I want? I'm going to go for something with a little bit more color. Full. And yes, this is my process. I don't like to get into nodes, I mean, sometimes I do, but I just want to, this particular LUT pack for me, works really well for this type of footage. You know, if I had a camera that did log, then maybe I would use LUTs more, but I don't. So I find that this LUT pack works quite well. Cruise is kind of cool. It's not too far off the original, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock it down a little bit in the key output. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to increase that. I'm going to increase that. I'm going to do a little bit of a color boost, a little bit of a saturation. But then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go over to the color slice wheels, and as you can see, and you can work with non-log footage with this, like you can increase particular colors. It's not going to be super isolated. I'm not going to do any masking or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bump up the greens a bit, just to kind of bump it a wee bit. And I'm going to do the skin, because the skin, as you can see, kind of affects the tree a little bit. Bump that up a wee bit. And then we're going to do the yellows. I'm going to bump those up a little bit just to kind of get those leaves to pop. And again, you can just click and drag the sliders just to kind of get a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of some of the shadows a wee bit. That looks pretty good. It's subtle, but you know, we get a little bit more detail in here, a little bit more pop here, a little bit more detail and pop here, a little less. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop those highlights down a little bit. Yeah, so everything kind of pops a little bit more. And if we look at that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just drag that over, and then we'll do our edge wipe. And then I'll show you the difference. Just increase that a wee bit. And we're going to let that play. Yeah, so everything just kind of pops a little bit more, a little less flat. Pretty flat. And a little bit more pop. Just go through that. As you can see, that's straight out of camera. And that's with a little color grade. Yeah, definitely better, for sure. All right, on to the next one. Okay, on this one, this is some GoPro footage. So, and as everybody knows, GoPro is notorious for being oversaturated and blown out. I try to shoot as flat a profile as I can on my GoPro, but, you know, a lot of wicked highlights and a lot of shadows and stuff like that. I've also slowed this down. I think I shot it at like 60 frames per second, but what we're going to try to do is maybe just get some of the color to pop a little bit more on the rider. So let us jump over to the color tab, and I think what I'm going to do on this one, let's try that one. Yeah, see, that's pretty cool. The what is that? Desiato? No, don't like that. That one, that's pretty meh. That's pretty flat. Oh, that's good if you want to flatten the image a little bit more. That one's not bad. Mathilde. Bayamon. Okay, so for this one, I kind of like the Garabo. This one here. Kind of warms it up a little bit. Kind of tones down this is a little bit green to me. A little bit more of a greeny tinge. This kind of browns it out a little bit. I kind of like the skin tone on that a little bit better. But what we're going to do is we're going to tweak it a bit. So go back to the key, drag that down a little bit, maybe like 90%. We're going to bump up the mid details. We're going to bump up the contrast a wee bit. Saturation, everything we're going to leave alone. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the color slice tab, and we're going to work on the blues and the cyans. So I'm going to drag that up, see what that does. You can see that kind of making a difference in his helmet a bit. Drag that up there. We're going to make can see on the bike frame it's kind of bumping up the blues a little bit more. Detail. Not a lot of grass in here, some over here. Maybe we'll bump up the greens a bit. Alright, that looks good. And what else? The red on his helmet. I'm gonna bump that, yeah, see that kind of pops it a little bit more. It darkens it, lightens it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So a little bit more pop to the here, but we've still kind of kept that less green, a little bit more tan. So that looks pretty good. And let's go back to the main edit. All right, let's see what that looks like. Actually, let me drag that over so that we kind of get it as it cruises through. All right, so that's out of the camera. And that's just kind of popped a little bit. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Kind of warms it up a little bit. I'd say it makes it a little bit more natural looking. So as you can see, right in through here, a little bit warmer, a little more greenish. To me, it looks a little more green, and that just kind of goes more with the setting, right? A little bit warmer, a little bit more richer. And then we've got his helmet. Just drag that out a little bit. Yeah, his helmet and red on the helmet pops definitely better. Yeah, that looks cool. All right, next one. This was a bit of a challenge. Some skate footage. This is with my DSLR, so shooting, I think, at 60 frames, so I kind of slowed it down, followed the action a little bit. All right, duplicated my clip. I'm gonna jump over there. Now this one, what I'm gonna do is I am going to go over to this. This is the default one that's in DaVinci Resolve for film looks, and these are all Rec 709, film emulation ones, some Fujifilm, some Kodak, whatnot. And these are definitely more LUTy, more overdramatic, more meant for raw footage. But you can still work with it, so I'll kind of show you how to do that. And I've got a couple of favorites that I've sort of saved. I do like this Fujifilm one. So if I double click on that, you'll see again, this is the original, this is the one that we're working on. And you can see how much it changes it. Obviously quite a bit. Or there's that one to kind of warm it up. And I've worked with these ones. They're two that I really like. And these are just in the default DaVinci Resolve ones. But definitely more dramatic. And you're definitely going to have to do more work with this one. So I'm going to drop that down to a lot more. So maybe like 75%. But as you can see, it still makes quite a difference. The red is definitely redder. The blue is a little bit more sky bluish. But definitely more highlights. It's kind of blown out all of this detail here. So we're going to need to work with that a little bit more. I'm going to bump up the detail. I always bump up the detail and the contrast. But what we're going to do is we're going to crank those highlights down. And as you can see, that really kind of knocks it down. And even at 100%, the sky is definitely a better color. The reds are still popping. The detail is back in here. It's even kind of increased the detail over here. So maybe not that much, maybe like 80% shadows we can still kind of crank up a little bit. I mean, as you can see, like even with non-long footage, you can really kind of bring out a lot of detail in the shadows. We're not going to go too crazy. And then we're going to jump over to the color, and we're going to bump up those reds on his shirt and the graffiti in the background there. And we're going to crank that up even more a little bit. On the reds. The blue, we're going to work with the sky. Let's have a look here. Not too much, it actually affects the building more than anything. And then the cyan, that kind of affects the sky, so we're going to kind of make that a little bit more dramatic. There we go. That looks pretty cool. But what we're also going to do is we're going to go to the offset. I'm going to crank that up a little bit just to kind of lift it. Not a couple, maybe just a couple of points, and maybe the gamma. Kind of do that, but I still want to keep the details in the foreground here. So that looks pretty cool. I'm gonna draw those shadows down a little bit. Yeah, all right, that looks cool. So a little bit more work involved when you're dealing with actual LUTs that are meant for raw footage. But yeah, that looks pretty cool. Let's just do that. This is of the camera. That is with the LUT. Oh yeah, much better. Yeah, that looks cool. Let me just move that over a little bit. Definitely adds more pop to the footage. Definitely. Let me just go ahead and disable this. And we're just going to watch the raw clip, or the unlutted clip. Oh, it looks good and everything. Right? But then we do that. Oh yeah, much better. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Alright, this one was a little bike race. This is with the DSLR as well. This is with the DSLR as well. And some good shallow depth of field as the riders are going by. Let's jump on over to the color. This one, I kind of want to warm up a little bit. I'm going to go back to my Bokana, which I really like, from the Cinematic LUTs free pack. That one's pretty cool, but it's a little bit too warm, so I'm going to drop that down a little bit more, maybe like 70%, because I still want a little bit of the green popping through. Bump that up, saturation a little bit, but I'm going to work more with this, and so I want the reds to kind of pop a little bit more. So I'm going to pop on over here, maybe a little bit more dramatic of a red, a little bit darker of a red, and the blues. Doesn't change it too much. Yeah, not too bad. I'll just drop that down a little bit. Cyans. You can see the jerseys on the back are a little bit more. I mean, what you can also do is you can take out color if you want. But I'm going to just add a little bit more darker, a little more dramatic blue to that. That looks pretty good. Greens. Let's see if I can kind of a little bit add it to the greens. Not too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bump up the shadows a little bit. Alright, that looks good. That is before. And that is after. Yeah, it definitely makes everything kind of pop a little bit more. Right? Let's have a look here. It looks good. And then a little bit more fallish. Definitely. Take out some of the greens in the trees back here, make them a little bit more, because this was early spring, so not a lot of leaves had come in. But yeah, it just adds a little bit of drama to it, right? And again, if we do the old output blanking, kind of make it a little bit more cinematic. And then what we could even do is we could drop a vignette on there, just for fun and kicks. Look at 0.95 and 0.40, just to kind of make it even more dramatic, more cinematic. Ooh, but what I need to do is, because they're a little too high in the frame, me having fun here, you can kind of drop that down a little bit. Let's see, where's the top of the frame there? There we go. I'm just going to disable that, just to kind of show you guys. Yeah, so they're definitely a little bit lower in the frame, more centered. When you add the output blanking, sometimes you need to drop the footage down, right? You can kind of work with it that way. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself here. That is for another tutorial. And I got one more clip, more sports related, and this was kind of shooting a little bit more towards the sun, so definitely brighter in through there. All right, so we've got some nice colors, some greens, we got some leafless trees. Let's go to our color wheel. What are we going to do with this one? Let's do that's a little bit too much. That's a bit, actually that's kind of cool. So this is one of the Rec 709 ones, the Kodak one from the film looks, but as you can see straight out, it's definitely done too much to this footage, right? So we're definitely going to have to knock that down. And like I said, you can use those ones, but you're definitely going to have to knock them down a little bit. But even at 35%, let's do 40%, it's definitely brought out more drama in the grass. It's definitely kind of made all this kind of a little bit more cinematic, but we're definitely going to need to work with the colors on this. First of all, I'm going to bump up shadows a wee bit. Maybe like 60%. I'm going to do an offset gain, 26. Gamma, I don't really want to touch that too much. Gamma we're going to leave. We're going to pop over the colors. We're going to bump up these reds and the jerseys. Make them a little bit more punchy. We're definitely going to drop the highlights so that you can see more of the gravel. Yeah, that looks cool. The cyans we're going to definitely pump up because that guy in the middle's got some good detail in his jersey. Bump that up a little bit. Blues, same thing. Make the blues a little bit. That doesn't really change it too much. And what else? Skin. Skin kind of affects things that are brown or tan color, so like their skin tone, obviously. Duh. So I'm going to bump that up a little bit. Not too much. Sometimes it can make faces look a little red, but that looks pretty cool. So we bumped up shadows, decreased saturation, or no, bumped up shadows, decreased highlights, bumped up the offset a little bit, tweaked the colors, dropped this down to 40%. And I think that's pretty cool, although now that I've done those color changes, I kind of want to bump that up maybe to like 46-ish percent. So that looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's definitely added more drama to it. Let's go back and check that. Yeah, definitely more in the reds. It's definitely kind of just made everything pop a little bit. What I might do though, this guy's looking a little red, so I'm going to drop the skin down a little bit. Yeah, it's a little more natural. That looks pretty good. So yeah, it looks good straight out camera. But yeah, everything looks much better. Yeah, that looks way better. Yeah, that looks cool. Yeah, see, straight out camera, everything's just really flat. And then as soon as you just add that little bit of color correction, just makes everything pop a little bit better. So, you know, perfect example. I mean, this is straight out the camera, non-log footage, not raw footage, shot on a pretty flat profile with a DSLR. A little bit of tweaking. I've used a LUT that is designed for raw footage. But again, once you kind of get into your little basic settings here, I haven't used any nodes or anything like that, so super simple, just a matter of getting in there and tweaking the colors a bit. The program is super strong. Like, you can do a lot with it, even if your footage is not raw footage, right? Like, so if you had iPhone footage, if you had Android footage, if you had GoPro footage, if you have DSLR footage, you can do a lot with them. You can make your videos look super cool, just with a little bit more drama, a little bit more punch. Yeah, you can make your footage look a little more punchy, a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more dramatic. Easy to do, and you don't need to really kind of get super into all the LUTs and the nodes and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now like this, and it's worked out really well for me. So that's just a real short little tutorial on how you can make your non-log, non-raw footage look really good, just with a little bit of work in DaVinci Resolve using some LUTs. And like I said, I will put the link to this particular one in the description. Some good LUTs in there, and again, you just kind of click on it, double click, apply the LUT, go down into the little color wheels, color tabs here, make some adjustments with the sliders. Super easy to do, and just kind of get what you want out of it. Hopefully that wasn't too scientific. Hopefully that wasn't too stressful. I try to make it as easy as possible because I don't like doing all the work. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully you got something from this. And if you did, let me know in the comments. If you notice something that I'm doing wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm open to whatever feedback you guys have. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.